the connection that you have with the last name?
Eddie Murphy and Charlie Murphy, first cousins. Being this 13, 14-year-old kid thrust into this world. Now you're starting to ride in limos. You go on to movie premieres, vacation.
Who would you say is one of the toughest personalities to manage?
It was probably Charlie and Faizon, because again, very, very outspoken. You're the boss. You can do whatever you want, but I have to make sure that I give you all of the information so that you can make the right decision. And then at some point, the audience is going to be looking for something new. Doesn't mean that you can't still work and be successful, but it's just like, all right, now they're going to be enamored with this guy.
What up, what up, what up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Want to welcome you back to another Black Brilliance branded conversation here on the Charles Coleman podcast. Today, I have one that I'm super excited about because we always like to talk to luminaries in the space of culture, in the space of entertainment, in the space of people who are moving conversation forward. And today is no exception at all. But before we get there, make sure you are locked in on Apple, on Spotify, on Tidal, on Google, on Amazon, all of the places where you can find podcasts is where you will find the Charles Coleman Podcast, your home for Black Brilliance. But we're going to get right into it. But before I do, I got to give a big shout out to Alpha Clothers, who hit me up with this amazing Brooklyn branded sweatshirt with the 7 different neighborhoods of Brooklyn. You got Bed-Stuy, Clinton Hill, Crown Heights, Flatbush, Fort Greene, Brownsville, and of course, East New York. That's not everything in Brooklyn, but it's a lot. So shout out to Alpha Clothers there. Brooklyn born, but 757 base, and they do amazing stuff. For me, my big thing is versatilities. They got a dope-ass tracksuit coming that they did for me. I got a suit coming that they did for me. They do men's shoes, and they did this amazing casual piece that they got in a hoodie as well. So Alpha Clothers, that's ALFA Clothers, is the ones you want to check out to get to it. But now we are going to get to it with someone who, if you know what you know, needs no introduction. We've had a lot of talent on the show, but a lot of times people don't appreciate the talent behind the talent. And today is an exception where we are going to do that and have a conversation with my man. Welcome to the couch, Richard Murphy. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Murphy.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so I want to get the obvious out the way for people who may not know. All right. The last name, people are like Richard Murphy, comedy, so on and so forth. I know the relationship, but what's the connection that you have with the last name?
So Eddie Murphy and Charlie Murphy, first cousins.
First cousin.
Our fathers were brothers.
Okay.
They there was about 6 siblings, 1 girl, 5 boys, and my father and their father were the youngest.
Not only are y'all first cousins, but as I understand it, and your fathers were brothers, as I understand it, Uncle Ray or your dad is basically a version of Richard Pryor's character from one of my favorite movies, Harlem Nights. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that movie was loosely based on my father's life. He used to own a bar in Brooklyn back in the day, and so he kind of had those experiences with with those mob fellas or what have you. So he knew a lot of those guys like Sonny Red, Sonny Black, all of those type of guys from back in those days.
Wow. What was it like as a young person when that movie first came out, seeing it and then seeing your dad represented in that way?
Well, honestly, I didn't know at that point when I was a kid, right? I was just excited, right? It was, we went to the premiere, another Eddie movie, what have you. But it definitely was, my father's bar was called Sugar Ray's. So that part of it, I made that connection.
Okay.
But I didn't learn later on. I didn't learn until later on, like the connection with the mob and that, that it was, loosely based on his life.
So when you're this is probably the last question I ask about the cousins before I get to like your incredible career. I got to know, right? So when you have someone who's in your family, like so for me, for example, I do cable news, I'm on TV, so on and so forth. When I'm around my family, they like Charles has just been talking since we were like young, and they're just used to it. I mean,
Right.
they're proud, but they're like, yeah, this nigga talks. That's what he does. Um, when it comes to them, your cousins, were they always like funny or entertaining or cracking jokes, or were they different, or was it annoying? Like, what was that like?
So, you got to remember that Eddie, they're much older than me. Eddie, Charlie, my brother, all about 14, 15 years older than me. So my
Mm.
brother really grew up kind of closer to Charlie and Eddie. So when I was, 8 or 9 years old, Eddie's on Saturday Night Live. So for me, that's just like, wow. And, you kind of, they were the older cousins. So, 8-year old, you don't have that much interaction with them. But, you kind of always heard like, oh, like Charlie was always like kind of always getting in trouble and that kind of thing. So it wasn't until I got a little older and my dad and brother started working for Eddie that I was around them a lot more. And it was, at that point, yeah, it was always laughs. It was always fun. But, imagine being this 13, 14-year-old kid thrust into this world. Now you're starting to ride in limos. You're going to movie premieres. You're going on, expense paid trips to, Jamaica on vacation. You're experiencing, just this incredible world. You go into movie sets. You're freaking. So coming to America, we were in California, and you're hanging around the set. So they'll let's say, hey, throw Richard in there, what have you. So they actually they had me doing standing in for Paul Bates. She's
Yeah,
your
yeah,
queen.
yeah, yeah,
So they had me standing in right to get the light or whatever. And then I thought about it. I was like, hey, I ain't that fat. That nigga's big. Oh, wait, can I cuss on him? Sorry.
yeah. No, you can.
But
You absolutely can. Go
okay.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. We all the way live.
um,
We're good. The bills are
but
paid.
I
We're
was
good.
just like, but it was fun. So that was kind of, at 15 years old, I'm going to star-studded New Year's Eve parties, and it was a cool experience. But I was a
Wow.
really kind of shy kid, so I wasn't the guy that walks around saying, "Yeah, you know who my cousin is, right?"
Right.
I actually kept it more quiet. Other people would tell people. I wouldn't tell people.
Right. So let's talk about you. I mean, so for people who don't know, let me give them a quick primer. You are a talent manager and have been managing some of the biggest names across all sorts of entertainment industries, not just comedy, not just music, not but also film as well. I mean, you've worked with everybody from 112 in the music industry to Anthony Hamilton to Faith to Redman to just a bunch of names in comedy. You work with someone near and dear to my heart, my girl Ida Rodriguez. You work with Capone, another funny brother, New York Kings of Comedy, just a crazy long list. And in film, a whole nother cadre of just talent. Number one, I guess I gotta ask, how do you, this is really my first question, in spaces where a lot of your talent are black people, are black and brown people, and there are not a ton of opportunities for us, period, in the space at all. So when you are talking about artists who may do similar things and be looking for similar opportunities, how do you navigate the lack of available options in a way that doesn't have different people on your roster feeling like hyper competitive or like, yo, you know what I'm saying, you was working for them to get that, I should have been on that, or what have you. How do you navigate that?
That is an acquired skill. Because what I learned early on in the business is that just what you said, like they'll be worried about what you're doing for somebody else,
Yeah.
and I always just made them feel like they were the only one that I was paying attention to. I mean, obviously they had enough sense because when I started my career, I started out at a larger agency, so I'm actually both agent and manager, yeah, right, and
Right.
they both kind of do similar things, but an agent is more so like a what do you call it? Like an employment agency, right? We get the talent work. Whereas as a manager, then my job is to kind of manage the agent, the lawyers, and kind of help run the talent in their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the talent, they're a business entity, and I'm the manager, like somebody running the store.
It seems like another aspect of your job, at least to keep your own sanity, has got to be a certain degree of like ego management as well. Because everybody you talking about got an ego. Like you got right behind you, you got plaques on the wall, Ashanti, and just everybody got an ego. So is there ever has there ever been a time that you had to like check somebody about their ego, or do you just sort of massage it in a like all right, I'm
It,
gonna let them rock right now, but we're gonna have a conversation a little while later.
it really depends on the personality, right? Some people you can be really forward with.
Okay.
And it also too depends on how close your relationship is. Like I work with Faizon Love. Faizon sometimes is he's very outspoken and what have you, and so in those type of scenarios, this I've been working with him for 20 years, and so there's a level of respect and love there. So we'll get into arguments, right? And sometimes with maybe like an Ashanti, whatever, you don't really want to get into an argument, but we do, again, I've been working with her for 20 years, so you kind of just learn how to massage the personality
Yeah.
of the person, and then and you know when to push and you know when to back off. But
Mm,
I'm also very like, I mean, look, my job is to give the information, give you all the information. You're the boss. You can do whatever you want,
mm,
but I have to make sure that I give you all of the information so that you can make the right decision that you need to make. And at the end of the day, what I learned also is you can't internalize it. It's not personal.
mm.
It's not personal. People often take offense and get, that's like, oh, well, they didn't take my idea, whatever. Not that I don't care, but I'm just like, all right, if you don't want to do it, fine, let's go. Keep it moving.
Who
Either you'll be right or you'll be wrong, and we'll still keep it moving.
would you say is I'm not one to get like super messy, but I do want to know like who would you say is one of the toughest personalities to manage, like ego wise?
Or the toughest person to manage, not even so much ego, just it was probably Charlie and Faison, because again, very very outspoken guys and what have
More
you,
than
and
more than like
a
any
lot
of
of
your
machismo.
more than any of your music clients?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really?
You know why? Because with most of my music clients, there was a buffer, right? As the agent, I'm dealing more with the manager, right? As my career started to boom, right? Then you start dealing more closely with the talent, right? And you kind of spend more time out there, getting FaceTiming with them, going to the shows, covering shows, that kind of thing. And then you develop a relationship where you're talking to them direct, or you're talking to them and the manager direct. But for me, probably it's just the comedians, because I'm more hands on. It's more direct. I got to get answers out of them, and when they don't want to do something, it's a fight.
So how hard is it? And I think I'm someone who sort of studies comedy and has studied comedy and just understands sort of. And actually, it was interesting enough. It was Ida who got me more and more into that, just understanding like the science of what it is to craft a joke and to write a
Right.
joke. And then so, through sort of knowing her and being cool with her, I learned more and more about the industry and how it works. How hard is it for you to take someone who has raw talent, be it in stand up, in terms of being able to tell a joke, who understands how to construct that, and then get them into a writer's room or get them into a casting office for a particular role, like where they make that jump from being on stage to actually like get into their bag for real, for real. How hard is
Right.
that?
I mean, it's tough, especially for people of color, right? I was again lucky enough to work with people who had kind of done the legwork already, right? Charlie became a stand-up after he had already become popular on television.
Yeah.
Faison was a stand-up, and he was doing television, he was doing movies or what have you. But the key there is being able to get the eyeballs of a really good agent, somebody who's hungry,
Mhm.
who can see the potential in you and can start making those calls and just kind of getting really aggressive and trying to put you in front of the right people, be it, casting or producer or director or what have you. Somebody who's going to, kind of see your talent and your potential and use you.
So now that brings me to another sort of question because you talked about Charlie sort of not doing it in reverse, but doing it in a different order. Now you have this new like genre. Like I talk about hip hop, and I'm like, all right, so you got mumble rap, which is sort of something a little bit different than what you and I grew up listening to in terms of hip hop and all that works. And so you have to create a space for it. Whether it may not even be a thing, but you got to create a space for it. Now in comedy, you have social media and you've got skits and people
Right.
who are running around and they're like, "Oh, so and so funny. They the funniest."
Right.
And what I have to tell people is that they may they may be good at sketch comedy, if you will, because that's what it is. It's online sketch comedy, but that doesn't mean that you can. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily ready to go and buy a $30 ticket to see them on at a stand up show. When they
Right.
come to town, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Um, but it has become a viable space for people who are
Absolutely.
like, like, yo, just hilarious. I'm gonna turn this into a regular spot on the Breakfast Club.
Right.
Country Wayne, others like they're DC Young Fly. I mean, they're doing a lot of different things. DC Young Fly's stand up has improved dramatically because he's been working at it, but that's not where he started. He started,
Right.
primarily on social media. How do you, as a talent evaluator, now sort of look at that and make sense in the like comedy realm for someone who's starting to make moves in that arena? Are you like, where do you think that's going in terms of a trend?
I mean, look, I keep trying to figure out where it's going, right? Because I'm I'm scrolling.
Yeah,
You kind of just always one day, we're all addicted to our phone, right? So, but I see some guys that do it really, really well, and I'm always looking like, and I've seen the evolution of it, right? And I've seen how far the talent and the skill level has like during pandemic when like Afion Crockett and
yeah.
and Spice Adams were kind of doing their spoof of
The verses, yeah,
verses and what have you, and just people getting better at editing and getting and kind of being more professional about it. Now you're using your camera, but you also got guys who are using sound. They got lavaliers. And they're editing and there's no weird background, whatever.
right, right,
So,
right, right.
and with that coupled with all of these streaming platforms, so and how people can really generate revenue off of their YouTubes and their and the Instagrams, what have you. So I see this world where you've got all of these content creators who, and for me it's the same for music too. Um, the the artist has a lot more control. So some of these guys don't have to rely on a studio to, get their talent out there, to get their projects out there. They can create it themselves. And we have this technology. We got all these filters and all of these different programs where you can take an iPhone and do a full feature film, put it out there yourself, do a deal with a Quelly TV or
Yeah.
one of these other smaller streaming platforms, and generate revenue.
Does that
So
make it?
I see more of that happening.
Yeah. Does that when you have conversations with like Faizon or Capone or people who've been in the game for a while that their bread and butter is stand up, do they ever sort of have a feeling like the industry's changing, or do they feel like it's just expanding?
I think they feel like it's expanding. Because I don't think that they feel like stand up comedy is going anywhere,
Yeah,
right? That's a true art form that it's not going to go anywhere. Definitely expanding, and so I think some of these guys are embracing the sketch comedy online or what have you, and some aren't. Some are just like, yo, this is what I do,
right,
and
right,
I
right,
don't think
right.
there's anything wrong with that. Yeah.
I always say that it would be interesting to see if during you talked about coming to America. If you look at like the 80s when celebrity culture in America was exploding. You're talking about like Madonna, Eddie Murphy, Magic Johnson. These are people, Michael Jackson,
Prince,
Prince.
MJ, right,
These are people like that are larger than life, right? There was no social media then.
right.
There was no social media then. I wonder, do you think that the mystique of them being celebrities and there being such a level of like barrier between them and everyday people helped them remain where they were in a way that social media like takes away. Because like on a certain level, like now fans expect it, and some people are really good at managing it. Like Beyonce, for example, she's on social media, but
Right.
she don't give you, but anything you get is what she gonna give you. It's not
Right.
24/7, right? So I
Right.
just wonder, like, how do you feel the social media space? Because you are someone who works with talent across the board and across different industries, has impacted that. Like, is the mystique better, or is it to be more? Is it better to be more active on social?
I, I mean, because this is the world that we live in now,
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously it's better for your brand, right? Because because at the end of the day, it is about the brand. Now we live in a world where everybody's kind of attaching themselves to a product or a film or whatever. Everybody is basically a walking billboard for the most part, right? So the best way to do that is to be able to engage your fans directly
Mm-hmm.
the way you want to do that. So it's a very useful tool. And like you said, like people like Beyonce and like a Dave Chappelle or whatever, who aren't on there every day and who use it as the tool that can help propel their and still give them that bit of anonymity where the people don't get you know basically tired of seeing them.
Right.
Because that can happen. That happens eventually, right? No matter who you are, what star you are, you've got a certain window to get everything popping, and then at some point, the audience is going to be looking for something new. Doesn't mean that you can't still work and be successful, but it's just like, all right, now they're going to be enamored with this guy. Oh
Yeah.
wow, so and so is really funny. You see
Everybody
it
has
happen over
that.
the years.
Everybody has that. Like you, you are on fire moment. Like
Oh yeah,
stretch, right? 50 had it when he was in music. Kevin Hart has had it. Where it's like everything you touch is gold, and people can't get enough of you.
yeah,
So you just got to you got to take advantage of it. But then after that, you just got to know when you don't got to step off the stage. Just step a little bit to the left,
yeah.
a little bit to the right, and you still be good. You know.
It's about growing as an artist too. I My philosophy is music, comedy, whatever. You've got about a 10-year span where you can be really, really hot and accomplish everything that you need to accomplish. And once you get through those 10 years, you've put yourself in a position where you're in the public's kind of you're embedded in here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But again, like I said, now sounds change, the world's changing, topics are changing, right? People are changing. So the people who was with you during your 10-year, they're gonna still ride with you. But now there's a new set of, there's a new generation, and they not rocking with you because they didn't grow up on you. They weren't there. Same thing with the music. Like you mentioned, the mumble rap or whatever. As somebody that's in music and I'm a musician, whatever. So I get it. It took me a while to be able to appreciate it beyond. I had to be able to hear past the mumble, so to speak, right? And to be able to hear and pick out. All right, you know what? This ain't really my thing, but this guy is good,
Right.
or that, or this is actually a good song. Because at the end of the day, good music is good music, and a good song is a good song, if it's mumble or not. I mean, I was a fan of what's that thing Kanye put out? What he said, poopity scoop or whatever. And I was like, this is so silly, and he's trolling us, but it was super catchy.
Yeah, it was. It was.
It didn't matter that it was goofy. It was cool. It was super catchy.
In your opinion, who would you say of your roster, somebody you've guided and supported, who has done that really well? Like, who do you think is that from somebody from your roster who's done that the best? Would you just describe like, yo, I have a hot period, 6, 8, 10 years. I'm gonna get everything out of it I can, and then I'm gonna, move around a little bit. I'm gonna transition to something that's gonna allow me to continue to capitalize on that, but just perhaps not at the same rate that I was before.
I'm gonna say right now for me that's Ashanti. Just kind of seeing her career arc, right? She came out hot as fire, right? Breaking records, first female to sell 500,000 records in a week. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records. She sold millions and millions of albums. Then you go through the what was going on with Murder Inc. and the Feds and what have you. and things kind of got off kilter, and then the label was over, and then it's like, all right, well, what do we do? What does she do? What have you? And thanks to the team that was pretty much the same team of people from pretty much from the beginning, managers, business manager, lawyers, like all the same people. We've known each other. We're like family for 20 years. But when all of that was going on, then it was like, all right, well, this is what we're gonna do. You can't get in the studio, you can't record, what have you. Um, Go do Broadway. Go act. She went and landed, the lead role in The Wiz on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then she wound up doing, the Muppets Wizard of Oz for CBS. And then she went from there to do, one of these tween movies, John Tucker Must Die.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's, extinct. What is it? Resident Evil, and then it's just, then a couple TV shows, and then it was like, all right, you know what? Now I want to do music again. So then she went and made a deal, with an independent label, put out this album. Boom! Now we're going back on the road again, right? Then that cools off, right? Now we're going through that, making movies, no new music, touring. Then I came up with an idea. I was like, well, why don't you and Ja Rule go and do some shows together? Because you guys got these records together, and people haven't seen y'all together in a long time.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do it. Nah. You know, we don't want to muddy the waters or what have you. I was like, y'all cool, right? There's no waters to muddy. So I actually kind of tricked them into doing it. I just basically wound up booking the both of them in Australia on the same run of dates. And then when they were there together and realized that, oh yeah, then it became a thing. So then that was another reinvention. And then we started touring them together probably for the last 3-4 years. And we took them from small clubs to theaters. And then now we're doing like package shows with with Nelly, and we're doing arenas. And like I was just in Atlanta last night. We had we was on the 50s, not Ja Rule though, but Ashanti. We were on the Tycoon Fest.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like Chris Brown, Monica, this new kid Friday, 112, Ashanti, of course. It was like 11 acts, what have you. So I mean, so it's just she just had these ebbs and flows and what have you. So right now, I think the past 2 years, have probably been her highest grossing in touring ever. Even when she was hot white fire back in 2001, like she's arguably hotter now than she was back then.
Wow.
So she's working on new music,
Does
a whole bunch of stuff.
when stuff like the interview with Irv and all that, like when all that background noise comes up, is that is there a certain element that like no press is bad, or no there's no such thing as bad press, or is it just annoying, or is it just like background noise that you don't even get involved in?
I think, look, it's been kind of this thing over the years, and she's kind of just sat back, and she's like, I'm not going to engage any negativity or what have you. I think that it just it was the straw that broke the camel's back. That last Drink Champs one, what have you, where
Right.
and again, I've always I won't say I've stayed neutral. Look, at the end of the day, we're a team, so it's about the team, what have you. But we've always been cool with. I've always was cool with him and his brother, and and Ja and all those guys. I mean, again, they were integral in my career, because when I first became an agent, a full agent, I was hanging out at Def Jam all the time, and I was in their offices, I was in Irv's office, I was in Ron Robinson's office, Ja Rule's manager. So they were a big part of my career and my growth in the industry. But yeah, I mean, I think she just handled it really well, and as a strong young lady, just said, I'm not going to engage in the negativity. But then, like I said, it was a bit much. So then she did have to go on. I think it was Angie Martinez, and
Martinez.
she gave her an interview.
She gave a
Yeah, but she did it classy. She didn't,
I get it. I get it.
no venom or whatever. She just told her side
Um,
of things.
have you ever had artists that like, had beef that were both on your roster that you had to sort of like mediate, or like really didn't fuck with each other, and so you had to be like, don't do that, or what? That was never that.
Nah, nah.
Good thing. That's a good thing
Mm.
because those egos can sometimes be an issue, which is pretty.
Oh yeah, yeah, it would have been. Yeah, no, I guess I was lucky enough to not have that be an issue.
Mm. Who would
Yeah.
you say is not a comedian, but is probably one of the funniest people on your roster that you work with, but is not a comedian?
But it's not a comedian.
I don't want to see. I don't want to ask you who the funniest comedian you work with is because you work with a lot of comedians, and they might feel like, oh, so you think so and so's funny than me? That's why I didn't want to
Well,
do
look,
that.
but here's my thing. I think people are great in their own way, and a lot of the comedians that I either are friends with or work with or what have you, they all have their thing, right? Because they're individuals, right? And they approach comedy from a different way. At the end of the day, funny is funny. So I don't know if anybody's funnier or what have you. And then obviously, look, I'm biased. I think the funniest and the best is, of course, my cousin. He's one of the best to ever do it. Um, and I don't see many people that's going to be able to do what he did, right?
Right.
So
I marvel at him because, and I try to break this down to people, and they don't always get it. I'm like, I need you to understand something. You're talking about the mid '80s, and you've got everybody from Bruce Willis to Kurt Russell to Mel Gibson and everybody else. Who these are white boys,
right,
right? And here you've got Eddie Murphy, who's the biggest commercial star in the world. And that's a big deal because you're talking about somebody who's a writer, who's an actor, and who's doing sketch comedy. So that by itself, I'm like, yo, you got to pay homage.
singer,
Right. And,
impressionist.
right. People forget how good of an impressionist
Like
he
his
is.
tools, his toolkit
His bag is
full.
nuts. His bag is nuts.
He's got
So
all the
his
tools.
bag
Yeah,
is nuts. So when we get into these top five conversations, right? I'm always like, look, it's almost unfair because for me, when people ask me about top five, I'm like, yo, you got to be able to do. I was like, if you really want me to give you a top five, comic wise, you got to be able to do stand up. You got to be able to do sketch. You got to be able to do a full movie because there's some people who like work well in sketch, but they in movies they just
right.
kind of
Yeah,
fall flat,
doesn't translate.
right?
Yeah,
And I was like, and then because we have this as a thing, because you had the Richard Pryor show, so you got to be able to do sketch, and then you got to be able to write. Like
right.
that's my thing.
Yeah.
I need to
I mean,
know
that's how you hone your skills.
right. What
That's
have
how
you
you
written? Right, like what have
I
you
told
written? And there's
so I did a
very few
reper.
people who can hit all of those at the level that your cousin hit. Very
Yeah,
few people.
yeah. And at the age, let's not forget when
Mm,
he burst on the scene, he was 18 years old. So imagine, like, who you were at 18, 19, 20 years old, right? Still trying to figure things out, what have you. This guy is 20, 21 years old on tour, selling out arenas across the globe. When he did Delirious, he was 21, 22
that's
years
crazy.
old.
That's crazy.
Imagine being that age and being that.
So you
Incredible.
talked you talked about this a little bit. I gotta ask, um, wildest. We've heard Charlie Murphy's story, of course, on Dave Chappelle. We've heard those, but for you, as you aged, wildest story hanging out with your cousin.
Trying to think of one that I could tell.
I mean, you don't got to censor yourself for me,
There was
bro.
some nights, boy. We used to actually call them nights like this. It used to be like you would know when it was going to be a crazy night, and I would just look at. He used to have this. I'm talking about Charlie. He used to have this support comedian, Freeze Love, um, and I would just look at Freeze and be like, "Nights like this, bruh." Nights like this. It's a reference to Eddie Kane Jr. in
Of course, and Five Puppies, absolutely.
nights like this.
I just wish.
Yeah, yeah. So when that was going down, I was like, oh, nights like this. It'd be like, Rich.
I need at least one. Yeah, just something. You gotta give me something.
All right, so I wasn't even there, but he was in California one weekend. He was shooting something. I don't know why I wasn't out there, or maybe he was on break or whatever, and he stayed out there. And I was. Um, this is when Inception was out. So I was in the movies with my wife watching Inception, right? So get all the way through close to near the end of the movie, right? And my phone is ringing. It's him. I'm like, yo, we're not working. You're there chilling, whatever. What could you possibly? I'm not responding until this movie is over. Phone keeps ringing, ring. So I just keep hitting ignore. Then my brother calls me. So I'm like, oh shit. So I leave. I walk out of the theater. I go in the lobby. He's like, yo, what's up with your cousin? I was like, I don't know what happened. He said, yo, he called and said if anything happens to him, so and so did it. I'm like, what? So I call him up. I'm like, yo, what's going on? Yo, man, so and so came in here with his barber and his bitch, and I think they trying to break into the room. I'm like, what are you talking about? So basically, he was a little paranoid, and he wound up leaving the hotel. And it's like 9 o'clock at night. He's got shades on, and I'm like, and I had arranged for his room to be moved and security to do some stuff, and um, sorry, and when I call him back to say, look, they're gonna move your room, whatever, he was like, yo, how do I get to the so and so hotel? I'm like, what are you talking about? Where you at? I'm on I'm on damn, I can't think of Sunset Boulevard. I said, well, which way are you going? I don't know. I'm just driving. Anyway, long story short, I got him back to the other hotel, and it was crazy. That was crazy for me because I'm trying to navigate a situation that if I was there, I would have been able to handle it. But now I'm trying to
Right.
navigate it from back in New York while he's in LA.
Mm, mm.
But it was crazy. But the guy was a friend of ours. I don't know. He was tripping.
I'm sure it's a lot in the music space. Is there anybody like any of your clients who you're like, who not a problem child? I don't want to use that term, not problem child, but is there anybody who you're like, when the phone rings or you wake up or you look at like Twitter or X and they're trending, you're like, what did they do? Like you know what I'm saying, like a wild one, or all your clients for the most part kind of like,
I mean, not nothing like what do they do now? I mean, maybe with Faizon sometimes because like I said, Faizon is
yeah,
outspoken.
because
So
he's
when
a, yeah,
when
he's
he's talking about Jay-Z or whoever, people be calling him a hater or whatever. I'm like, he's not a hater. He just speaks. He
he's how
speaks.
he
This
feels.
is this is his POV. You know, probably him. Oh, and then obviously when he got in trouble for getting in fights in the Ohio airport and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, nah, nobody really.
No, that's a good thing. I think I have a last question. I guess one of the things we talked about was your artists are now, in every respect, they're brands, and they are walking billboards, and every opportunity is potentially an opportunity to get something else or to take something else away because we live in such a complete 365 news cycle. um has there ever been like a space where you like wanted to guide an artist like, yo, I don't really think this is a good idea for you? Like, how did you feel, for example, you got Faith Evans and she decides to like step into the love and hip hop realm? Was you like, I don't know if this is like what you need to do, or is it just like, yo, this is going to expose you to a new audience? Like, when artists are evolving in that way and they're making those types of calls, how do you, as the talent manager or the agent, have conversations with them about, this is what you need to consider if you are going to go that
I mean,
route?
you just have the conversation. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with her decision to do that, but like there's been situations where shows have been offered to to a Charlie or to Ashanti, what have you, and we talk about the pros and cons of it. Right? It could be a long time ago, Dancing with the Stars. It was a new show, what have you. They didn't have any quote unquote real stars, right? Or everybody was more of not as hot as they used to be,
Yeah,
right?
it was like
You
in the
know what?
twilight of their
Yeah,
career.
yeah. So when you get requests like that, for an artist or what have you, you got to say, well, okay, it's network, it's X amount of eyeballs on it, but then you got to look at who's doing it, who the hosts are, stuff like that, and you kind of talk through it. And sometimes it's just a flat no, and sometimes it's all right. You know what? Let's think about this. So you have to have the conversation, and you can as an advisor, you go through, all of the, checks and balances, why this makes sense, why it doesn't make sense. And if it makes, and also does the money make sense, right? But you figure out, how does this affect your career short and long
Yeah.
term? I'm very much a big picture, long term. Let's do this so that we can move here and here, right? Because you're not always to do this huge leap and hit a huge lick. Sometimes you got to do it in segments or whatever. And I believe in doing it in segments and getting from, one spot to the next. But it just all depends.
That you can think of? What's like the craziest idea that you might have been pitched from one of your one of your clients?
Oh, probably OnlyFans or something like that.
Oh, I know Ashanti
OnlyFans.
got pitched for OnlyFans. No,
Yeah.
what was that
Uh,
number like?
I'll be honest. It didn't come to me,
Oh,
so
yeah, okay.
it went to some of the other team members.
Wow.
So
Anybody else on the roster got hit for the
no,
OnlyFans?
mm-mm,
Okay.
nope, just her.
All right, last one I
Um,
gotta ask, man, because everybody wants the stories. They always want to hear the inside backdoor, you know, scoop on everything. But I heard a story about your pops going to a fortune teller, or a fortune teller talking about the family. Talking about the
so
family. I need to get this story right.
what happened was, and my aunt tells this story better. My grandmother, my father's mother, she was walking down the street. This is back in, 30s, whatever. She's walking down the street, and this woman stops her and says, I need to talk to you. So, my grandmother's like, what? She's like, I see something down the line in your family, the future. I see somebody who's going to be world famous. Their name will be in lights, the whole nine yards. She said, it's not right now, but it's going to be in the near future. So, but she said, but according to my aunt, the woman sounded she sounded really legitimate, and that she knew what she was talking about. And according to my aunt, she was shook a little bit, but she came back home and told them, all of her kids, what had happened. And the joke is, Eddie told it on Arsenio, but he said basically all of my uncles and aunts and everybody went out and started taking tap dance lessons, learning piano. They figured it was going to be them. But lo and behold, it wasn't that generation. It was the next
It was
generation.
legendary.
Generation. It was Eddie, and then we got the bonus with Charlie.
Man. And then with you, I mean, you ain't no
Yeah.
money. I mean, great.
My name ain't in lights though.
But listen, if
I'm gonna
if
get a
it ain't for
neon
the work
sign
that you
though.
do, the lights don't
Huh?
come on, and there ain't nobody
Facts.
came in lights. So
Facts.
that's just as important. I mean,
Well, you know what? Interesting enough. So years ago, Eddie used to have this ranch in upstate New York, and one time he threw this big party. Right, he called it the Hootenanny, right? The Murphy Hootenanny. I mean, he had clowns and fortune tellers, and because it was a ranch, so he had horses up there, the
okay,
whole nine yards, right? So it had kind of like a Western theme, but it was just basically like a big family gathering, food and the whole nine yards. So, long story short, fortune teller pulls me to the side and basically says that, you know, you're going to work in the family business.
how old were
So,
you?
and then it's kind of, huh?
How old were you?
Uh, maybe about 18,
Okay,
19.
okay, all right.
You know? And before I made, my venture into this part of the business, I was a singer songwriter, so that's why I figured I was going to do my thing, right? In music, I was a rapper, singer, all of that, right? I was in groups, the whole nine yards, contests, all of that, right? Um, and then it wasn't until I went to college, then I came back to New York. Eddie was a client over at one of the bigger agencies, ICM. My brother set it up for me to get an interview and basically join the agent training program, which meant I'd started in the mailroom and then just worked my way up, what have you. And then that's kind of when I realized that, all right, that's you're not supposed to be in front of the camera. You're supposed to be doing this. And eventually, the big thing for me was being able to work with Charlie later on down the line. And at that point, I was like, oh yeah, this is the family business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So we had two fortune tellers telling us what's up.
Yo, man, I've never personally wanted to know, but now that now that you've seen, for those of y'all who are watching, if y'all go down to New Orleans, you be on Bourbon Street and dip up one of them side streets for them fortune tellers, you might find somebody famous in your family. You never know. But in any event, I really want to thank you, man. This was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A
It
lot of
was
stuff
fun.
that I did not know about just so many different things. I mean, we spent a lot of time in comedy, but your work in music, your work in film, all of these things are hugely important to the culture and to moving things forward. And I want to thank you for being a part of the Charles Coleman podcast on today's conversation. I want to, on a very serious level, give you your flowers because for so many of us, we get to spaces, and I talked to my man Blue Williams about this a little
I
while
know.
ago. I just did an episode with Blue. Um, a lot of us get to these spaces, and then we decide that we want gatekeepers who don't look like us, and so the gatekeepers who don't look like us then make decisions about what's big enough for us to be in, and the people who we can talk to, and the
Right.
outlets we can give interviews to, and the ones we don't. And oftentimes it ends up shutting out conversations that like people really want to hear. And so I know that your job is not necessarily easy. I want to thank you for really like being a conduit to the culture and continuing to do what it is that you do, bro, because it's really, really important. So
Thank you. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.